So how are you going to start?
Well, ordinarily I just start with a little of this yeast that I keep going in my refrigerator, but I thought I'd show you how to make the yeast.
Okay.
And I'm using fresh yeast because that's what I get here. If you were making this in the States, you'd use dried yeast.
Dried yeast.
Maybe a teaspoonful of dried yeast.
Okay.
And some warm water to dissolve the yeast.
And then you just mix it up.
Just mix it up, let it dissolve, and then you add some flour. You want about equal quantities of flour and water. It's the same kind of flour that we would call bread flour at home. It's not particularly strong, but you know, Europeans don't use very strong flour when they make bread.
But does it have a high gluten content?
No, not especially.
All right, I thought you needed that for bread.
No, you don't. You know, it's a real mistake that we make to think you need some kind of super gluten flour to make bread.
So you're actually making the mother.
The mother of them all,
Okay,
yes. And that gets covered up with good old plastic wrap, good old traditional plastic wrap, and I keep it in the refrigerator. So this is what I'm going to use to make the biga.
Okay.
Bread making is 3 steps. One is making the leaven, which you can do once and for all. Then you make the biga, and then you make the dough.
And then you make the dough.
And the biga is something very similar to what the French call pouliche.
Okay,
It's, you know, you add your leaven in there.
Look at how
and
good
I'm going
that
to use
looks.
my fingers.
Use your hands, the old
because
Italian way.
That's the only way to get it all out of there.
Yeah.
That's a cup of water, however. I've measured that out.
Okay.
And I should add probably double that quantity of flour. So there's a cup of flour.
Should I use my hands to start it, or?
You can use your hands or you can use a spoon if you'd
Well,
rather.
I use my hands because I'm used to doing it a mano. And what kind of a consistency are you looking for here? Do you want to take a dough that's on the wet side, or?
Yeah, I want the biga to be really what we call a slurry more than a dough.
Okay, that's a good word.
It really hasn't become a dough yet.
It hasn't. It's like kind of a shaggy mass, is what I call it.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
Great. Now, you didn't put any salt in because?
No, I didn't because I'm making Tuscan bread.
Okay.
Now, sometimes I'll add salt if I'm making it for myself because, well, unsalted bread is a very Tuscan thing. It takes a certain amount of getting used to.
Even for you, who's lived here over 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, somehow I think the salt brings out the flavor of the wheat flour more. And with good flour like this, I like to bring it out.
Well, now, why is it that there is no salt in Tuscan bread?
People have all kinds of reasons. And this is my own private theory that nobody else knows anything about, but I think that the reason is because the Tuscans and the Umbrians are very thrifty people. And bread that doesn't have salt in it lasts longer than bread that does. It doesn't absorb moisture, and so therefore
it won't get moldy. Okay, does that look good?
Yeah, that looks perfect. That's just exactly what I want. Again, the famous traditional plastic wrap covers it up.
Now, where does this go?
This goes, ordinarily, I just keep it out in my house because my house is fairly cool. If I were doing this in a New York City apartment, I might look for the coolest place in the apartment. I might even put it in the refrigerator for a little bit. But it needs to sit in a fairly cool...
And you want this to double or triple in size?
Well, it should double at least and get very fermented looking, holy, bubbling around there, active, so that you know that it's alive. That's the most important thing. Now you can see how active it is.
Nice and fluffy.
Yeah, it's very fluffy.
Yeah.
It's full of little bubbly holes, and it's still a very, very loose. Sometimes you even get a little liquid separating on the top of it, but that's okay. That's fine.
You want to keep this crumb fairly open, don't you?
Yeah, and you know, an interesting thing is that the more liquid and loose the dough is, the better.
Well, I'm going to tell you my little secret.
Yeah.
I use ice cubes.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
I use ice cubes. Because I've played with Tuscan bread so much in my kitchen, like you have.
Yeah.
That you're always trying to perfect it, get it to be a little bit. It's never going to be exactly the way you're going to be able to make it in Tuscany because, of course, all of the ingredients are different. The different flours,
air is different, and the
yeast,
water
all
is
of
different.
That.
You know,
but you can experiment at home, and by using crushed ice, I have found that I can get a nicer, open texture.
That's interesting. And you add it right in at this point?
No, I add it when I'm beating it in. If I use like a stand mixer.
It should take about 7 cups of flour, but you know that too can vary enormously depending on the weather,
right?
How humid it is, all that sort of thing.
You
Good
know what,
things.
Nancy? I
What?
think we got enough here.
I think we have
Do you
too.
mind if I throw this on the board?
No, just throw it right out on the
Okay,
board,
good.
and I put a little flour on the board for you.
Because I think it's easier to work with it.
Yeah, it is
On
indeed.
a board. I
Yeah.
wouldn't put any more flour there
Okay,
just yet.
all
I
right.
think maybe that's plenty.
Okay.
Okay. Do you
Now
want
we
to do
go
the
to the
honors,
kneading.
or you want me
Yes,
to do it?
you can do it. There, it's all yours.
right, okay.
I know
I
you
love
love
this
that part.
too.
I know.
This is feeling just about right. That was just about the right amount of flour. We
That
don't need any
is
more.
perfect.
So you would need it about, what, 5 minutes or so?
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
It
to
depends
get
on
the
what you've
gluten
got
really
playing on the
going.
record player or on the radio.
And we're going to make one loaf out of this, or are we
We
going to
can make one loaf, or we can divide it and make 2 loaves. And I prefer, if we're
I think
making
you should give me
crostini.
one loaf to take home, don't
Well.
you? After all, Tuscan hospitality.
Right, indeed.
Okay, what are we going to put this in?
You want to put it in the same bowl we just used?
Yeah, put it over there
All
on
right.
the counter.
You know, sometimes I put a couple of drops of olive oil in there.
Okay, basta così.
All right, drop it right in there, roll
gonna-
it around in the olive oil a little bit,
And now we got to cover that,
and
right?
now we'll cover it with our famous
Okay, that's your
Tuscan.
job. Okay.
Yeah.
That was
Oh, it's
great.
great to have you in the kitchen, you know.
Anytime you want to invite me is just fine.
All right, that's terrific. That's a deal.
Okay, want me to put that off to the side for you? Because I know
Yeah.
you probably have
Yeah.
another one of these ready.
How did you guess? How
I
did
don't
you
know.
guess?
Bread bakers all think
All
alike, I
right.
guess. Okay.
All right, here's the other one. Now this is one that I made up yesterday of that same flour. Notice how the bread dough actually is a little sort of gray in color.
Yeah.
That's because there's a lot of bran left in this flour.
In this flour.
It
This is
isn't really a
great.
whole wheat flour the way we think of it, but that's what gives it that sort of creamy gray color,
Beautiful.
creamy beige color. Isn't it nice?
Yeah, and so that means that we're not going to have a white-looking crumb.
No. Okay. Now, I think we should I'd do 2 long and 1 round out of that.
So you get 3 out of this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
2 long and 1 round? Okay. How about?
The traditional Tuscan way is a kind of oblong-shaped
Yeah.
loaf.
Don't they have a special name for that? I thought they used to call it the filone. Did they?
No, filone is the long, narrow
long,
one.
narrow
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay.
But we're not going to make anything like a French baguette.
Should I make a round one?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do a round. This is going to be a small round, though, because
Yeah,
I
it
gave
is.
you most of the
Dear,
dough.
you want
Give
some
me a little
more?
bit more, yeah. Okay, then, once we have our...
Once we have them, then we have to put them aside to rise.
Okay, what are you going to put some
I'm going to put
cornmeal?
some, I've got some semolina right
Okay,
here. This is
semolina.
this good Italian semolina, which is really,
hard wheat flour.
I don't want them to grow together, so
Yeah.
I'm going to just tuck this in between the loaves. Like that.
I learn something new every day. That's
Yeah.
great.
It's the uses of plastic wrap.
Okay, we have Tuscan bread.
We have Tuscan bread ready to go. Well, it's not
Okay.
ready to go in the oven. It's
But
got to rise.
this has got to rise.
For about half an hour. Now it needs a cover. Right over there, you'll see
Okay.
a cloth to put over the
Alright,
top of it.
Will do. Okay.
I've got
Whoa, that's hot.
tiles in this oven, you know.
So you're trying to duplicate the Italian
Right.
hot wood
typical
fired oven. Okay, so
Isn't that
now
great?
the bread.
The bread.
Here
yes.
comes the fruition from
This-
all that work we did.
See what it looks like. Oh, it looks nice, doesn't it?
Oh, it looks
Yeah.
great. It looks great.
Terrific.